Hey guys, it's the Bruce City Rider. Thanks for checking back into the BCR Garage. And this is part 8 of my Softail tire and wheel project. So I already took the back wheel off. I had to take my seat off and my saddlebags. Reason being because I have long saddlebags and they get in the way of the axle. And I was able to remove the axle without changing the location of the axle adjuster nut. That's exactly how it was when I took it off. All you got to do is pound out the axle enough where you can remove the adjuster spacer and move the axle forward right up onto the bolt here, and that gives you enough slack to roll the belt off the sprocket. And speaking of the sprocket, I had to remove the belt guard, the chrome belt guard, but not the lower rock guard. You see a lot of guys removing that on different model year bikes, but on this one you can't remove it because you can't get to this, the back of this nut, or the one up there with the belt and tire on the bike. There's no way of getting to them, and you don't need to remove it. Like I said, you can just roll it right off. I'll show you when I put it back together how I roll it back on. And then I did decide to take the brakes off, even though you don't have to. I figured I'm in this far, I might as well change out the brake pads. I'll do that in a separate vid. So that's just a matter of taking off 2 bolts, popping the caliper off, and then sliding the pads out by removing the retainer spring. I don't know if you can see that. And then I want to show you these pads. They got a lot of meat on them yet. Let's get something solid in the background here. They got a lot of meat on them, but they're starting to chip and decay around the edges. These things are ancient, man. I don't even know how many miles are on them. Tens of thousands, I think. Okay, the focus of this video is to remove this Dunlop D402 tire on my Rabaconda machine, replace the valve stem, and then put a new Dunlop D402 back on. So before you can do that, you got to remove the belt sprocket. This is too bulky to leave on the wheel, and it won't work on the machine with this on. You can leave the brake disc on, but not the sprocket. So we got to remove these 5 acorn nuts for starters. Okay, next you got to remove the valve core. So get one of these little valve core removal tools. Okay, we're ready to mount the wheel onto the Rabaconda machine. I have the 15mm spindle on here, which is required on my particular wheels because they have a 3/4 inch axle. So there's these 2 magnetic rubber spacers on the frame that you want to support the tire. So to adjust them, you just pop them off and then back on. And then we ran into our first challenge. If you can see right here on my setup, when I removed the sprocket, 3 of the studs remained in the bore and 2 of them came out. The acorn nuts are attached to these bolts, and there's no way of getting these out. So I don't know what the deal is with that, but that's how they came out. So hopefully we'll have enough space here to get around the frame where I can take advantage of the support of these blocks. I'll give you a quick look at that. Okay, if you've been following along and you watched me change my my first tire, which was the 21-inch version of this tire, I did have some difficulties, which is to be expected. It was my first one. This will be number 2. The one thing that helped me break the bead on that is by lowering this to this position, because it was a low profile tire. But for this rear tire, I have this mounted in the uppermost position to break the bead. So we'll put our action handle in. And then you want to adjust where the pad meets the tire. You want to go just above the rim. There, she just broke. So it took a little effort, but it wasn't too bad. Now we'll just keep going around the tire. Now we don't have that issue on this side. You can see the studs I was talking about. So this side is being stubborn. This tire has been on here for probably 10 years. Well, that's definitely off the bead. Yep, we got her. Yep. Beautiful. So next, we want to put in our spacer here for our 15mm axle adapter, and that helps take up space in the bore. It locks it in. Okay, next I'm going to lube the bead up with some soap and water. I'll use grease when I go to put it on, but because we don't have as good of access to the tire right now, soap and water works great. It'll seep in everywhere it needs to go. So now we take the duck head and ratchet assembly, with the adapter again for the smaller axle. Place it over the spindle, loosen it up, and put the grooves in the bottom of the duck head over the rim edge, tighten it up. Now we want to start at the 6 o'clock position so we can rotate the tire. Now we take our spoon, grab the tire underneath the duck head, and we can use the action bar to put the tire in the drop center to help us. And lift and lock. I'll show you what that looks like. Over the duck head, locked into the locking position, and that's where that will stay for the first say 6 or 8 inches. After that, the spoon will come out. Bring our ratchet around. Okay, I almost forgot to mention, Rabaconda says you can't change tires on a solid disc wheel like this because there's nowhere to lock it in. They provide you with this locking bar, so if you got a mag style wheel like on my Road Glide over here, that goes in to the frame. There's holes in the frame, and that'll keep the wheel secure. And they also provide you with this really nice strap that you might have seen me use when I did my front spoked wheel. So my idea is to also use the same strap, but run it through the opening in the brake disc in the back. I'll get it attached and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, Rabaconda, if you're watching, I think this is going to work. Same as with the spokes. You run the strap underneath the leg of the frame, and then instead of running it through the spokes, you just bring it around back and you run it through the opening in the brake disc. It's almost the exact same position as when you run it with the spokes, because you put it at about the 5 o'clock position and it would be down here, so it's maybe 3 inches higher. Hopefully you can see that. All right, I'll get this set back up on the tripod and we'll get to removing this tire. Put it in my ratchet and we're ready to rock. Like butter. Okay, same thing. It's a little trickier on this side. To get the back, you got to hook the back of the tire over the duck head into the lock position. And she's off. Now I'm going to replace the valve stem. It's a metal valve stem. Why am I going to replace it? Because the part that seals is rubber, and that needs to be replaced from time to time. The one I'm replacing with, this one here, has a dual-sided rubber gasket, whereas the old one only had the rubber on the inside. All right, ready to mount the tire. I'm going to take some bead grease, apply it to the duck head. I already greased both beads of my new Dunlop tire. So the next step is to locate your yellow dot and the yellow dot signifies the lightest part of the tire, which you want to line up with the valve stem, which is the heaviest part of the wheel. Mine's kind of faint, but it's right here. I'll show you. And then the next thing is to check your rotational arrow, because most tires are rotational. Mine on this side signifies this way, and this is my sprocket side, which is on the left side of my bike, so that would be correct. So then you're going to put the tire over the duck head so you can see the duck head right there, and you're going to cover the tail. And if you can, push some of it onto the bead. Now the fun part. The second bead on the stiff Dunlop tire. So again, you want to expose the duck head. We'll use the tire iron to help us. I think I'm going to go ahead and install a drop center tool right away. Put a little grease on it. That should really help us. And we'll continue on. So as expected, that last maybe 25% was very, very tough. It's just a matter of getting the right positions for your drop center tools, because the key is to get the tire in the drop center that lowers it on the opposite side of where you're trying to get it in. All right, well, that went pretty well, I think, for my second tire, especially dealing with the Dunlop D402. So next up for me is I got to get these studs out, and I ordered some new grade 8 bolts for my sprocket. They say you're not supposed to reuse sprocket bolts, although it does not say that in the service manual. But I'm going to go ahead with the popular belief on that, and I got some new bolts coming in next week, and so I'll get those put on with the sprocket, and once I do that, then I'm going to change out the wheel bearings and the races, and then I'm going to balance it. Now I've already got good videos on wheel bearings, changing out wheel bearings and balancing when I did my front wheel, so I'm not going to record that, but I'll leave links below so you can take a look at that if you're interested. It's the same procedure, similar, I'll say. Obviously the weights I'm going to be using on this wheel are going to be the stick-on kind instead of the kind that attach to your spoke. And then all I got to do is remount it on the bike, and I am going to install new brakes on the back. I may record that, but for now this will do it for the BCR Softail Tire and Wheel project. See you soon. Cheers, everybody.